Hello everyone, I'm Santiago and today I'm going to be playing Tekken 8 on Steam Deck thanks to Bandai Namco for providing a code of the game. So it's been a while since I played Tekken, honestly. It came out a couple of years ago, this one. It's basically playable, says some text requires manually invoking the on-screen keyboard, probably if you want to log into something, maybe the first time you ever launch the game, I guess. It's an Unreal Engine 5 game, and the first time that I tried it, I was only on the Steam Deck LCD, so this is the OLED version of the Steam Deck, and I actually have better settings for this one. So welcome to Tekken 8. In the main menu, the first thing that I would do is going into screen settings, and here at the bottom in the middle, effect saturation settings on low, so there's less effects on screen. That's my guess. I'm not entirely sure if it means the amount of color or the amount of particles, so there you go. Motion blur off, personal preference, and you can also choose HDR if you want to. It has a tiny impact on performance, but it's an option if you're on an OLED Steam Deck. Full screen 800p, you can go down to 1152 by 720 if you want to apply extra sharpness from the built-in FSR1. Very red shading off, I haven't noticed a difference when it comes to performance. Render scale 60%, it's a little bit lower than what I showed you 2 years ago, but I highly recommend this one. Upscaling, there's many options here. Catmull ROM by Cubic, that does look great. TAAU, TSR, FSR1, FSR2, NIS, and XeSS. So far, I recommend using this one. I'll explain you why. In this case, at the right, you can see the one that's here by default, the Catmull by Cubic upscaler. I think it's pretty obvious, or TAAU, one of those. I think it's pretty obvious which one looks better. Obviously, the one on the left. The problem, unfortunately, is that the performance hit is pretty large. Sometimes it can be at 10% more GPU usage. And the issue with that is that while fighting in the game and lots of effects show up, this is one of the best settings to use when it comes to lowering the load on the GPU. So despite being an upscaler difference, it does have a cost on performance. Why am I doing this? Well, when it comes to the Steam Deck, here you're looking at a zoomed in image. And while it's way sharper at the left, on the smaller screen it's way less obvious. So I think it's a decent sacrifice to make. I mean, just look at the hair. If you're looking at it very close, yeah, I mean, you lose a lot of definition. But again, my opinion, you can enable it and get a little worse performance. Maybe instead of dropping into the mid to upper 50s, you drop into the 50s. Fighting game, up to you. Then anti-aliasing quality, low seems to be good enough. Anything above medium wasn't great. Shadow quality on medium, I know this one is a bit controversial, but you lose a lot of shadows otherwise. Alright, so as a reference image, here goes low shadows versus medium. As you can see, low shadows removes all those real-time shadows, which again might not seem like much, but it really changes how the game looks like a lot, especially in an actual fight. So you can even see it in the main menu, and the GPU usage increase is significantly higher, like 9 to 10% more GPU usage. And we're trying to hit 60s, and we were already dropping into the 50s. So I think this is a good idea to keep on. Balance versus performance. I think this is a huge hit to visuals, so I like to keep this one on. Texture quality, medium was enough. Going higher than this used a lot of VRAM. Effect quality, low or medium. Personally, I think low makes more sense in this case. I highly recommend you lower that one. It adds a lot to the characters when it comes to the subsurface scattering. I think you get what I say. It adds a lot of fidelity to characters, but again, it's a noticeable hit in performance, and I think you can live without this. It still looks good. I don't think it's as noticeable as shadows being removed entirely. It's a great effect, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's one of the sacrifices that needs to be made for Steam Deck performance, at least in my opinion. Post-processing quality, I highly recommend medium, because on low, as you can probably notice, the color correction and the bloom Kinda. Yeah, the bloom is also missing, but the color correction is a big deal. The characters kind of look green. The overall image loses a lot of color saturation. So I think it's a big deal when it comes to visuals. I mean, yeah, look at this. It does have a hit, obviously, but not as big as shadows or effects. So I think it's good to enable this one. General visual look helps a lot, especially when not using HDR. Also, I think this is one of those times when post-processing also controls ambient occlusion. So you don't lose ambient occlusion either. That's my guess. Yeah, I think so. You can see the darkness out here. So definitely adds ambient occlusion as well. So I think it's worth enabling this one on medium despite the small performance hits. The moderate, I would say, not small. Background quality is basically the environments you're fighting in, so low. And this should keep you mostly into the 60s with minor drops into the 50s. I think those are impossible to avoid, but I think this is the best balance of visuals and performance, at least for the smaller screen. Okay, on purpose, I'm showing you one of the first fights. Why? Because this one drops pretty hard due to what's happening in the background. So here you'll see that it drops below 60, but when you're actually in combat, there's way less instances when this happens. So here we go, now in actual combat. And there will be explosions in the background. It's a freaking epic scene. So as you can see, it can drop, again, pretty hard in this section due to the explosions in the background, the smoke, the feathering effects, that is kind of like hair. But on the Steam Deck LCD, I was using a bit higher settings than this, and it was dropping into the 50s way more often than here. So the OLED does have an advantage because faster memory. Not that big of an advantage, but an advantage nonetheless. In this case, on the LCD Steam Deck, I would personally just lower the resolution maybe 5% more. Instead of 60% resolution, maybe 50 or 55. But again, don't expect it to be that much better on the OLED. It does make a difference because we're very close to the edge of 60s. I mean, we drop sometimes here and there, but again, I'm doing this on purpose. I'm going to show you more stages, so that's not an issue. So here it goes. And again, if it drops while doing an attack like this, it's not a big deal. We're actually watching what's going on. Badass. But 99% of the time in combat, it's into the 60s, which is what matters. Many of you guys told me, hey, in the previous video 2 years ago, hey, on a fighting game, there's no way I'm dropping below 60. Well, this is as good as it can get, at least in my opinion, while maintaining visuals as best as we can. Another good news that I have for you in this game is that it's actually 16 by 10, except in the cutscenes. The cutscenes are FMVs, pre-recorded videos. And well, generally speaking, those have black bars. I don't think it's a big deal because it's a cutscene, but the game itself uses the entire screen. To me, that's a big deal because many games, many new games even, nowadays, force 16 by 9, looking at you, Resident Evil franchise. So yeah, this one on that side is pretty good. Again, this upscaler is not the best. TSR looks significantly better, which is what I was using, I think, on the LCD Steam Deck video. But it dropped way more often below 60. In this match, there is less stuff happening in the background. That's why it runs so much better than the beginning of the game. But this is a game that spawns effects each time you get a hit in. It's badass. I mean, when I was playing Tekken 3 in the PS1, I loved those effects jumping on each hit. Well, in this other match, you're basically in a ring, but it has a lot of effects. So you can, at some point when those effects show up in the background, actually get a drop, which freaking sucks. When that fire shows up, it really hits it hard. Same when I made a kick over there. So at those points, the CPU spikes, the CPU usage. I'm guessing that happens because it loses frequency. The GPU is trying to get more juice. The CPU is fighting for it as well. And well, it can drop like that. I didn't really find a way to fix it. But lowering the settings further wasn't perfect. As you can see now, this cutscene is with black bars, obviously pre-recorded. Let's see, now I can skip. The game looks fantastic, don't get me wrong, it's UE5 at the end of the day. For fighting games you want 60s, solid. But I think to have a fun time on Steam Deck is not that bad. This match and the match at the beginning of the game were the worst I found so far. This one mostly due to the inconsistency when those explosions in the background with fire happen. But again, if you went with TSR or any setting a little bit higher than this one, this would be dropping into the 40s instead. So I think this is as good as it can get. Still pretty damn good. When I'm playing the game, honestly, I'm not a big fighting game guy. I play them very casual. I'm not doing competitions or anything like that. Probably competition, I wouldn't do it on Steam Deck. But again, personal preference. I think this is great to play if you're doing casual stuff. The upscaler, again, not the best. It doesn't hold up as well as TSR or TAAU. But again, considering the performance difference, it can help you, instead of dropping into the 50s, mid-50s, drop into the 40s. So to me, that's a big deal in a game like this. Now in the same stage, we fight again. And I think on this one, actually, there's going to be a screen in the background that is like a picture-in-picture fight of this fight. Which I was expecting it to destroy performance, but it was fine. So I don't 100% get it here. But it's those fire effects that randomly pop up. Again, for the background, it looks amazing. It's just, it really takes the Steam Deck out of guard. To say it in some way. Out of the blue, the GPU usage increases significantly, needs more performance. And there you go. The CPU is like, oh no, I need to work. They share that 15 watt TDP as usual. So that changed very quickly. It's not great when stuff like that shows up out of the blue. You can see there is quite a few stages. Again, this one I would say is the most surprising one, at least when it comes to demands due to those fire explosion things. Then you got this one that is not that difficult to render. The urban square is fine until the explosions show up in the first one. Alright, and now on this one has water, has foliage in the background. And honestly, this one I think is the easiest to run so far, despite characters creating some water splashes. So in comparison to Tekken 7, they really did think about how to make the games performant. At least when it comes to the environments. And the character not being with a lot of fur that destroyed the GPU. The thing here though is that I'm pretty sure that the reflections on the ground are missing because effects are on low, obviously. And so far the closest one that I found when it comes to dropping frames is this one. Apart from the liquid, we have effects in the background and stuff moving around. But again, it ain't as bad as the one in the that I showed you in that stadium, that closed off ring. So yeah. All things considered, I think those first two stages that I showed you are a good reference. Okay, so my thoughts on this one. I really do like this game. Again, I played it 2 years ago very little, but I was busy with other games. There was a lot of stuff, new stuff coming out. Really, the last time I took fighting games kinda seriously was Tekken 3 on the PS1, but I was going to school back then when I played that. I had a lot of fun though, destroying Ogre and all that. And here, well, it really brings back all those memories, just because of the fact that many of the characters are still here, but they are aged or, well, way better graphics. I mean, let's be honest, when I was playing this on PlayStation 1, my brain remembers it with these graphics, but obviously it wasn't a UE5 game back then. It was just a few polygons hitting each other. Also, what I do notice when I'm playing this same level in the campaign, it does have more scripted stuff happening in the background, such as that fire jumping out at us. So if you're playing the campaign, it does run a bit worse in comparison to before. I'm also using a character that does way more effects than Kuma. So Jin does know how to do cool moves. So again, that background fire seems to be scripted for the campaign, mostly. It seems to be happening way more often when I'm playing the story. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, most of the time the game is 60 frames. Some drops here and there into the 50s. But if you go anywhere higher than this, you're going to get drops into the 40s, which is way more obvious in a fighting game. So yeah, would I recommend it on Steam Deck? Hell yeah. I don't know why it's playable, marked as playable, maybe due to the smaller text. Which, I mean, I get it. Not the smaller text, sorry, that you have to invoke the on-screen keyboard. Maybe it's to log into a server or something. I didn't personally have to do that myself. I went straight into the menu, no problems. But I haven't played fighting games in a while, and I wanted to get back to them. I'm going to probably do the entire Tekken franchise on Steam Deck, or the entire Street Fighter franchise as well. There's a lot of cool games there that we could check out. To do a little bit different than my other content, because sometimes maybe it's a little bit too many new releases. I think fighting games are a big deal. I play them a huge amount of time, especially when I was going to high school, before that. So let's see again the explosion. 3, 2, 1, explosion in the background. Yeah, there it goes. It's scripted. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did revisiting Tekken 8. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys. Thanks for watching.